Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are so pleased to have as our guest Dr. Kulreet Chaudhary, and she is a medical doctor, neurologist, neuroscientist, and an internationally recognized expert in the ancient practice of Ayurvedic medicine. She earned her medical degree at Loma Linda University School of Medicine, completed her internship at University of California, Los Angeles, and neurology residency at University of California in San Diego.
I was like, I don't remember being in Chicago, Ellen.
And also, in addition, Dr. Chaudhary is an author of several books, including The Prime and Sound Medicine. She's a pioneer in the field of integrative medicine and also the former director of Wellspring Health in Scripps Memorial Hospital, and also is associated with Healthy Directions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Chaudhary.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I was excited to see your bio because I have been involved in natural medicine for about 60 years now.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
A long time.
Phenomenal.
And that's what we did then. And so much of what we were teaching at the time is now being incorporated into what's called integrative medicine and CAM therapy. Let's go back in time and tell me how you got interested in, Ayurveda. I know that's something you learned at home, but even the entire realm of becoming a doctor.
Well, as you mentioned, I was lucky that Ayurveda was kind of peppered throughout my childhood. And we didn't know that it was a natural medicine. It was just the way we ate. It was the way that we approached any health problems. We meditated, we did yoga, and that was just the way, I lived. And then, of course, as you go into medical school, you decide, that's village medicine. That doesn't mean anything. I'm learning all this brave new world medicine. I don't need all that stuff. And so it was a healthy dose of humility that actually brought me back to it. I had just finished my neurology residency at UCSD, and a year out, I developed intractable migraine headaches. And, as an arrogant young neurologist, I was like, no problem. I'm a neurologist. I can manage these migraine headaches. And I couldn't. The side effects of the medications were worse than the headaches, and the headaches became debilitating. So that's when I went back to my Ayurvedic medicine roots from childhood. And within 3 months, my headaches were gone. I had a much better understanding of how to eat, how to live. But I'd also lost 10 pounds. I didn't even remember, gaining during residency. And my creativity and energy was just, out the roof. And so it was very eye-opening that there's much, much more to keeping the body healthy than just studying disease and pathology, which is, mostly what we focused on during medical training.
Well, as a young girl, what made you want to go into medicine in the first place?
It's one of those things that I think I was 4 years old when I said I was going to become a physician. So I think it was just one of those really deep inner callings. I think it's my life purpose. It's what I came kind of to teach and give. So it wasn't for me just a profession. I call it as like kind of a soul searching, process of going into the ancient traditions. I learned so much about myself, but I've been able to teach so much. So from a very young age, it was just like a laser focus. I knew this was what I was going to do. And then it wasn't until I got sick as an adult that I realized, oh, okay. And it's going to be this combination of, East meets West.
Which I truly believe is the best medicine. Because then, in natural medicine, and so much of Ayurveda would be what we call natural medicine, yet it is thousands of years old. Because, I've been doing this so long that I've actually had many different Ayurvedic physicians on the show, including
fantastic.
You may know Dr. Vasant Lad.
Oh, yes.
And he offered me information that I included in a couple of the books I have written. So I've been involved in this a very long time. And I think it's amazing because in Ayurveda, Dr. Ladd came to Columbia University, where I was on the board of traditional medicine there. And by the way, we use the word traditional correctly.
I was about to comment on that.
Yeah, please do. Share what you would call traditional medicine.
Well, I mean, the way that we, of course, were, enculturated in medical school was that what allopathic medicine, which is the modern version of medicine, is what we consider tradition. And everything outside of that is like complementary or additive to that, right? And of course, though, allopathic medicine it's fairly young. It's very, very recent. And given how young it is, it's already surprising how many problems it's caused. Not that there's not a place for it, but it's definitely not a placeholder for preventing disease. We're great at managing emergencies, acute issues, but not at disease prevention. We don't address that at all. And so when I think about traditional medicine, I'm really thinking of the medical traditions like Ayurveda, like Siddha medicine, like traditional Chinese medicine that have been around for thousands and thousands of years because they were traditionally what kept people in balance with nature, with their environment, and with each other. So traditional medicine to me is all about balance and harmony. And, that's not our focus.
That's what I think. And so I'm a big proponent of using that word traditional exactly how you just described it, Dr. Chaudhary. So in other words, focusing on calling traditional medicine, that would be Ayurveda. How about Western herbal medicine, Native American medicine?
Right.
Every tradition, as you said, that has been around with humans for thousands of years and extremely useful and effective with an excellent adverse event profile. And as we move now into evidence-based medicine, we see that that is the case. So I would really love to promote exactly what you are doing, which what we can call integrative, where traditional medicine should be the first line standard of practice all the time for everyone because of the fact that it's so effective with such a low incident, not none, but a low incidence of adverse effects.
Right.
And then there's always time to bring in surgery and pharmaceutical drugs to manage symptoms, not cure disease, but manage symptoms, which is very necessary and life-saving. So it can be all used together.
Absolutely. And that was the beauty of when I brought in Ayurvedic medicine into my neurology practice. And since you've had other Ayurvedic practitioners, you've probably already heard about the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which are the three body types in Ayurveda.
Well, maybe I heard of it, doctor, but please share with our audience what you're talking about there with those three words.
Absolutely. So the three doshas are the three mind-body types of Ayurveda. And I think, Ellen, one of the reasons why people keep trying to find types and categories is it goes back to this ancient wisdom that we do fall into types. And most people have one or two predominant doshas. And, we all have all three in certain amounts, but one or two will be predominant. And the three doshas are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And Vata is made up of the elements of space and air. So they tend to have slender build naturally, very small boned. They're generally very enthusiastic, artistic. They have fluctuating energy, meaning they can have really high energy and then kind of crash. Sensitive digestion, meaning, with the fluctuating energy, you can see kind of fluctuating digestion as well. And out of balance, they can develop things like anxiety, constipation, and insomnia. Pitta is the second dosha. That's a combination of water and fire. They're medium build. They tend to be more muscular. They tend to be very focused, organized. They're very high energy, and they have extremely strong digestion until they get older because they kind of abuse their digestion because it's so strong. And out of balance, they can develop things like anger, diarrhea, rashes. And finally, the final dosha is kapha, which is large build, large bones. They're very easygoing, relaxed, naturally, stable energy. They're not, too high, not too low, just kind of flow with the constant level of energy. And they naturally have slow digestion, and out of balance, they tend towards depression, obesity, and sinus congestion. And so what I was saying, Ellen, is that for me as a neurologist, once I understood the doshas, everything changed. Because before, let's say, somebody came in with a headache like I had. Well, all headaches were the same, right? I had a certain number of medications, and each headache that walked in got the same medications. Once I was trained in Ayurveda, there was no two headaches that were alike. Each headache had a different story, and I looked at which doshas were involved, and then accordingly first started with changes in their diet. In Ayurveda, food is medicine. So we always start with changes in diet first, and the prescriptions were highly individualized. So it just completely changed my approach to conditions. People weren't a diagnosis. They were an individualized journey, and how they got to a particular disease state, or in Ayurveda, we would call it a specific imbalance, really depended on which dosha was involved.
That's so true. And in Western medicine, that's not such a foreign concept, because we had similar classifications at one point that were quite popular of an ectomorph, endomorph, and mesomorph, which really matches right up.
It matches completely up, yes.
Just recognizing just what you said. And I would like to reintroduce you today as well, because I'd like to tell our listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse. And today my guest is Dr. Kulreet Chaudhary, and she is a medical doctor, neurologist, neuroscientist, and internationally recognized. We're so happy to have her as our guest. And as you can tell if you've been listening, she is an integrative physician, somebody who has a very, very deep understanding of conventional medical training, and also is bringing in natural interventions into her practice, which really is, I don't call it anything but good medicine.
I love that.
In your book, The Prime, and your book, Sound Medicine, what's your book, Sound Medicine, about?
So we were talking just a little bit about the doshas and how food can influence the doshas. There's many different things that can influence the doshas. I went to India a few years ago and studied the ancient Siddha medicine text. And Siddha medicine is even older than Ayurveda. Many of the concepts are similar, but Siddha medicine goes more deeply into what I would term as vibrational medicine. And so what vibrational medicine is looking at is when we go beyond just foods, herbs, and behaviors, we look at how do vibrations actually change biology. And so I focus specifically on the use of sound traditionally to cure conditions. And to me, at first, when I began to, do the book, because I had started a mantra meditation practice at a very, very young age when I was 9 years old, I thought I understood it. But when I really went deeply into it, I realized I did not appreciate how deeply scientific this was and how much quantum biology is involved in the use of sound as a medical therapy. And Ellen, it blew me away how much, these ancient physicians, and I call them quantum biologists because it goes so beyond our understanding of medicine. They really understood us from the subatomic level. I was just blown away at how much science that they understood, which we are only now beginning to discover. So the book is bridging the ancient use of sound as a medical tool, as well as the current science that supports why it was so powerful and continues to be powerful.
Yes, what we're finding now is so many of these ancient techniques, when we study them with evidence-based interventions, we're finding that, they've been true all along. And I'd love to introduce you. We'll talk about this sometime because that's so interesting, to both Stephen Halperin, who you may have heard of, who does sound healing and is a very, very, very famous musician who has been using this for 50 years. And Dr. Glenn Ryan, who runs the Quantum Biology Laboratory, where he does experiments looking at DNA and measuring the change that occurs when it is influenced by various, what you're talking about, quantum kinds of energetics.
That was actually the research we wanted to do in India, was using some of these ancient sounds. Some of them specifically were recorded in the ancient texts as having a direct influence on the DNA and even being able to change DNA expression. That was the study that we wanted to do in India. And unfortunately, COVID came around and we had to bring everything to an end.
Okay, but that's recent. That's recent.
Yeah. That is recent.
We should actually talk about that off air, and I can introduce you to these researchers who have, the ability to even measure the change in DNA wrapping and other measurable parameters. So yeah,
fantastic.
We'll have fun talking about that. Now, if people wanted to find your books, such as The Prime and Sound Medicine, what's the best way?
Anywhere you would normally get books. So Amazon tends to be the go-to, I think, for most people. But you can find them easily there. And on my website, Dr. K. Chaudhary, we have a lot of information on some of the basics in Ayurveda, and information about the different doshas and how to begin to approach understanding your dosha.
Well, I do want to share with our listeners that we have a direct line to your website, in case, hearing it on the air and writing it down might be a little difficult, but you can go ahead and give it out. But I do want to tell people on the show archive, we always have a live link to the guest's website and where they can find their book. So how would someone find you?
Basically, just put in my name. I'm the only Kulreet Chaudhary on the website, but the website that I gave, on the internet, but my website, Dr. K. Chaudhary, and you'll have a link to that. That has most of the information that we've been talking about on it. So that is kind of the easiest way. And it has several of my videos talking about Ayurveda and specific herbal recommendations and dietary recommendations and so forth.
And also, you put it together so beautifully. And there's so many surprising things that I learned when I began studying Ayurveda. For instance, many people in the health food realm believe that the more raw, cold food that you eat, the better. And I was shocked when a teacher explained to me why that is not the case.
Right.
And then I personally changed my diet and found, wow, was that true?
Yes.
So what is the teaching about eating all cold, raw, tons of green foods in Ayurveda?
Well, everything in Ayurveda is according to the dosha. That's why it's such a foundational teaching that, so often, even in natural medicine, we'll make blanket statements that everybody should be doing this or everybody should be doing that. And as you found out, even with the raw diet, it may work for some people at some times, but it's definitely not a global recommendation. And the reason for that is we have a concept in Ayurveda where like increases like and opposites are used as medicine. And what that means is if you're eating certain foods that are similar to your dosha, it will increase that dosha and make it go out of balance. And the opposite of that dosha will act as a medicine. So let me give an example with the raw foods. So the raw foods are cold, they're difficult to digest, and they naturally increase vata. They're actually difficult for all doshas to digest. Certain like raw fruits are okay, certain things like cucumbers are okay, but eating a lot of raw foods makes it very, very difficult to break them down, especially just given how weak modern digestion has become. And so raw foods in particular really increase the vata dosha. And the vata dosha is considered the king dosha because it has the capacity to make the other doshas go out of balance. So anytime you bring vata out of balance, it tends to upset the other doshas. So just eating raw foods alone can lead to disturbances like anxiety if it's increasing vata. And there's such a huge connection between food and mood. And the way that you eat will influence the way that you think. And so it's the same for like the Pitta dosha, for example. Pitta does not do well with fermented food because Pitta is naturally hot and fermented food tends to increase heat. And so when a Pitta dosha eats too many fermented food, it will lead to agitation, irritation, and changes in mood, again, resulting from the foods you're eating. And kapha, for example, so many people are promoting like a high protein diet, a keto diet, where they're getting large amounts of meat. Well, kapha does absolutely horrible with a large amount of meat because it's a naturally very sturdy dosha. It already has the elements of water and earth. And so if you put too much meat into kapha, it creates an imbalance. So eating is very specific to the dosha, and eating the wrong foods, like when kapha goes out of balance, it can lead to depression. Eating the wrong foods can result not just in physical problems, but psychological issues.
Yeah, people don't even think about that, but so true, because you're talking about mood and how mood is related to how we help balance our doshas, which is just an ancient technique, but also modern research supports that. Now, let's talk a little bit about herbs, because the name of this show is Herbally Yours. And we've been talking about herbs on this show since it began in I believe it was 89 or 90. So we're always talking about herbs. And I know that in dosha management and in Ayurveda in particular, and also in all the literature that's now on PubMed, we're looking at the healing effects of herbs. Mm-hmm. So you can please, share any herb that you'd particularly like to.
So one of my favorite all-time herbs is Trifla, and that's spelled Triphala. And, Ellen, it's a little funny when we talk about herbs in Ayurveda because there's a fine line between an herb and a food. Trifla, for example, is a combination of 3 berries. And one of the berries, amla berry, I grew up eating that as a pickle on my kitchen table. So when we talk about herbs, sometimes in Ayurveda, it's like, well, am I talking about a food or am I talking about an herb? The reason why I love Trifla is it's a tridoshic herb, and that means it balances all 3 doshas. And it's just this amazing, amazing supplement for removing toxins in the gut and for balancing the gut microbiome. And we know now so much about the impact of the gut microbiome on our overall health. And so Ayurveda focuses heavily on normalizing digestion first. That's always where we begin, because as you normalize digestion, it impacts the mind, it impacts every single organ system in the body. So that's why I love Trifla, is it's a herb that balances all 3 doshas. It's very, very gentle. You can take it regularly, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams at bedtime, and it helps remove the junk from the GI tract. And it just naturally supports what I call a smart gut. And that's a gut that has symbiotic bacteria that are helping your brain make the right choices in life, both for food as well as behavior.
Well, it's definitely one that I use daily.
Oh, you do?
Every night. And that's been for over 50 years.
How did you find out about Trifla 50 years ago, Ellen? I'm really impressed.
That's when I was studying Ayurvedic medicine. I've been doing natural medicine since 1964. That's with a 6.
Yeah, as soon as you study Ayurveda, it's hard not to take Trifla. And I'm the same. I've been taking it for a few decades, and it's just phenomenal what it does for you.
And it's very mild. It's not like I think of a laxative,
no.
X-Lax or something.
No, not at all.
From what I've looked at deeply in the activity of the specific, like you said, 3 different plants. It's not one plant. That's the word Tri. I believe it actually helps to build the peristaltic action.
Yes, naturally. That's exactly right. Yeah, what I call it as it is helping to create a smart gut, because it's actually helping with the neural connections in the gut, which are responsible for normal peristalsis. So it's in addition to the, enteric nervous system, which it's supporting, it's also then supporting the microbiome in the gut. So, I mean, it does like everything you want it to do for the gut, and very different from a laxative, which is just, pushing the stool out. This is actually encouraging your gut to remember how to function properly.
Yeah, I really believe in it totally. And it's so gentle. I have my mom on it who's 90, she's 93 and has never taken a pharmaceutical drug, which is where we are in my family. I'm not telling everyone to do that, but that's where we are in my family.
Well, I've got my mom on it too, Ellen. And my mom she's 74, but my God, that woman has more energy than most 18-year-olds.
She's about my age, right? So when we're talking, are you still doing, Dr. Kulreet, are you still doing client care, like direct patient care?
I'm just transitioning away from that. And that was a really difficult decision for me because I love doing it so much. But my focus is going more and more towards education and working with larger groups, and really focusing on how to educate on a much larger scale. So I'm at kind of the tail end of my patient practice, although I think my husband and I will still offer like some retreats to be able to go kind of into those deep healing states, especially with the use of sound medicine. But definitely life is now calling me more towards the educational part of this.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. And people can find out more at Dr. That's DrCchaudhary.com. We will have a live link right there. But so many things that would be left to talk about. And if anyone is feeling anxious or irritable or depressed, who would think that these things can be addressed rather than by a pharmaceutical, which has a long list of adverse effects, by something very gentle, such as a change in diet, which really should be the first focus, I think, of all good medicine.
One of the things, Ellen, that I like to remind people about, because it can be daunting when you first begin looking at ways to change your health, is that small steps done every day are so much more powerful than big steps done occasionally. And so if you're looking for ways of how to take a more natural approach, and rather than trying to medicate the body out of a symptom, actually change the root cause, take a simple step. Start with just a supplement like Trifla, so easy to take, very affordable, very well tolerated. Or maybe just learn about your dosha and make one dietary change. You don't have to change everything in order to feel better.
Great advice, doctor. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.